Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about nail trims in both cats and dogs. A lot of nail trims are similar between cats and dogs, but there may be some things that are specific from one species to the other, and we'll kind of go over some of those specific hints in the future. The most important things with nail trims is the knowledge of how to do them, but also having the appropriate equipment available and having some things ready in case there is bleeding or things that need to be done on an emergency basis. Nail trims are a part of a grooming procedure, but also they do carry health consequences if not done properly or not done effectively or soon enough. Cats, we don't tend to trim nails quite as often as dogs, although those cats that are not declawed do need nail trims to actually help out with people as far as getting scratched and other things that may happen. Elderly people may have diseases like diabetes that they don't want to get injuries that may be necessary to trim nails for those reasons as well. The proper equipment we have for nail trims, we do have nail trimmers that are made specifically for dogs and cats. We use certain types of nail trimmers that are kind of a claw variety, or actually a scissor variety nail trimmer. There are others that are kind of more guillotine variety, where it kind of cuts the nail by squishing it. Those don't seem to cut quite as well or quite as sharply. There are different sizes of nail trimmers, both for cats and dogs. The smaller ones sometimes people prefer because of control, especially for cats and small mammals. So this also kind of extends over to rabbits and small mammals, guinea pigs, hamsters, and the like. The nail trimming process itself is important to have two people, essentially. Sometimes this can be accomplished as you get more adept at the procedure. You can go ahead and do this by yourself. Many times treats to reinforce the behaviors that you want are helpful because initially, especially when you're training puppies, there may be some resistance to the nail trimming itself. So the handling of the paws and positive treat reinforcement during that, or the contact of the nail trimmer on the nail itself, sometimes isn't negative to the puppy. So treats can override that, and many times by taking this incrementally and slowly, we can get by some of those negative effects that may happen as far as the cats and the dogs. The dogs are definitely something where less restraint is better if possible. There are situations where it may be dangerous if we don't have adequate restraint for the animal or the person that's doing the nail trim or the handler. There are even situations where it's not safe for you to do this at home. This is something that may need some type of chemical restraint, and actually there are situations where we do that quite often. It's much more low-key for the pets, but obviously that's not something we start off with right away. That's something that if we find the other techniques unrealistic or unavailable, we will go to that as well. Nail trims consist of a couple different things. We actually have to examine the nail itself. The nail is comprised of kind of an outer portion of the nail that really doesn't have much for feeling, and then the inner portion that has a blood supply as well as a nerve supply. The goal is to trim as much of the outer part of the nail as possible without interrupting the blood and the nerve supply on the inside. So that's kind of done in a way I find it easiest to do by taking small amounts of nail at a time. There are some specific points where we can actually see a portion of the nail that may be the beginning of the blood supply, and by knowing that, we can kind of stop at that point before we get into that nail. Should we go too far, it's important to have styptic powder, which is a powder that stops bleeding, so that if you're doing this on a Sunday afternoon, it won't be an emergency where you'll wind up in the emergency clinic for just a minor bleeding situation. Although a little blood can go a long way and it looks pretty bad, most of these things aren't going to be life-threatening. Cats, different from dogs, they actually have nails that kind of retract back in. We have to sometimes push on the bottom of the nail, or bottom of the pad, to protrude the nail and actually trim the nail. Cats typically are easier to trim than dogs. It's a little bit more visible most of the time as to what you're seeing and where you need to trim those nails. In dogs, there can be lighter colored nails or darker colored nails, and also in other species as well, but the darker colored nails, it does take some discretion and some knowledge. Sometimes there's an easy way to compare those to the lighter nails and just kind of trim a similar amount off, but by taking that slowly and gradually, you get a better feel for how much to remove.